Thank you very much. Gentleman from pass, okay. Congressman Conley from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And welcome, Mr. Liddy. A couple of questions. Your predecessor, Mr. Greenberg, testified before this committee a few weeks ago, and he indicated that he would now favor federal regulation of credit default swap instruments and derivatives, for that matter. Do you share that opinion, that the federal government needs to regulate those financial instruments?
Yeah, I think they need to be put on an exchange. I think they need to be standardized, and it needs to be a lot more transparency. And if there was federal regulation, you would get all of those.
And if I understood your testimony this morning, Mr. Liddy, you believe that in retrospect, where AIG went wrong was, frankly, branching out into such financial instruments in the form of AIG15 specifically.
Yes, those instruments are more appropriate for large commercial banks and investment banks that have the skill sets, a more refined skill set to handle them. It's not appropriate for an insurance company, in my judgment.
Right. Could you just review for me the figures I thought I heard you give in your testimony this morning? How much did AIG get pumped into the company directly from appropriated dollars from this body, and how much came directly from the Federal Reserve?
As we stand right now, the money that's been advanced to the company is $40 billion out of TARP, out of the Treasury program, and about a $43 billion in loans from the Federal Reserve.
Gotcha.
Now, in addition to that, let me just finish. In addition to that, there's another $30 billion of TARP that we can draw on if we need it, and there's an additional $17 billion to top the $43 billion off to $60 that we could draw from as a loan from the Federal Reserve.
Okay. Thank you. Now, with respect to governance, if I understand it correctly, there are 3 federally appointed trustees?
Yes.
All of them are appointed by the Federal Reserve. Is that correct?
You should ask them. They represent Treasury as the owner of the 79.9. I think they were appointed by the Federal Reserve because the Federal Reserve was delegated that responsibility by Treasury, but I'm not involved in that process.
Right. But with respect to their government, I mean, their names are Jill Considine, Chester Feldberg, and Douglas Foshee. That ring a bell?
Yes. Yes.
Those are all Federal Reserve appointees, are they not?
Yes, but I'm sorry, where I'm stumbling because I'm just not involved in it is I think they represent the Treasury's interest, the ownership interest of.
You say you're not involved
in the selection and role of the trustees.
in the selection, but you certainly are involved in the interaction.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Are there any other federal trustees?
No.
So for example, there are no elected officials or anyone appointed by this elected body as a trustee of AIG?
No, certainly not that I'm aware of.
They don't attend board meetings, is that correct?
They do not. The Federal Reserve has delegates at every board meeting and every committee meeting.
And is the board still pretty much a private sector-like board? Well, what I'm asking is there a clear delineation between the public trustees representing federal interests of almost 80% and the board of directors that apparently, I'm asking, stays pretty much privately controlled and appointed?
There is a delineation, but again, the linchpin of that would be the representatives from the Federal Reserve, who are observers and overseers at every board meeting, every committee meeting, every strategy meeting, every discussion that we have.
So representatives of the Federal Reserve sit in on board meetings?
Yes, they do.
Got you. Unlike these trustees?
Correct.
What is the, going back to the governance question, what is the distinction then between the role of these trustees and those members of the Federal Reserve who sit in on board meetings overseeing that procedure?
I'm going to answer, and then I think you should address that to the trustees. The trustees are the protectors of the 79.9% ownership and the value that we'd like to create for that. The Federal Reserve is representing its interests as a lender and has in the past been asked by the Treasury to also kind of coordinate Treasury's interaction with the company so that there can be only one organization doing it instead of splitting it. We have 360-degree oversight with an awful lot of people wanting to understand what our strategy is, what our execution is. The Fed has been asked to try to coordinate that 360-degree oversight.
My time is probably running out, but let me ask a final question. With respect to bonuses, one of the rationales in the public record anyhow for bonuses was recruitment and retention. How many folks, with respect to the bonuses in question, how many folks left the company who received bonuses?
Yeah, I would say very few. Now, are you talking about, and here's where it's very easy to get off the track. You're talking about FP retention bonuses or overall company bonuses, or what?
Well, I'll gladly go with the FP bonuses for a minute.
On the FP sector, we had about maybe 10 to 12 to 15 resignations. We've had several of those people rescind those resignations and stay with us, even as they work to return their bonuses. Don't know if the resignations are over yet. Some have said, you know, I'm going to help you wind this down and be as professional as I can, but then I want to get on with my life and I want to resign. So I don't know that my answer is reflective of what will eventually happen.
If it's possible to get us data for the record in terms of that list of people who qualified for bonuses or got bonuses, and how many of them left the company or stayed with the company.
Okay.
I would appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Your 5